So, good morning. My name is James Forrest. I'm the program coordinator for Norcal PTAC, and we are holding an Earth Day event with California Water Resources and California Parks and Recreation. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. The procurement specialist we have joining us from Norcal PTAC today is Lenny Bean. He's going to start things off with his presentation after my brief introduction. And then we have two very lovely SB DVBE program managers and advocates from California state departments. First, we have Rich Zmuda, the program manager at SB DVBE with the California Department of Water Resources. And then we have Michelle Sakamoto from the California Department of Parks and Recreation. You'll be hearing a bit more about them when the time comes. Lenny and I are from Norcal PTAC. We're the hosts of today's webinar. Norcal PTAC stands for the Northern California Procurement Technical Assistance Center. It's a big mouthful, so Norcal PTAC is a lot easier to say for us. You can see this is our service area map on the right. This is in Northern California, so I know some of you are joining from out of the area. I heard San Diego. There are tons of PTACs across the center. Basically, we are grant-funded nonprofit programs, part of a network of programs. We're each independent, but you can find your local PTAC at the link at the bottom of the page there. You can see APTAC-US. There's about 7 PTACs just in California alone. So if you're not in our service area, don't worry. If you are in our service area, then you're eligible for certain client benefits. So the first thing we do, it's the bread and butter of what all PTACs do, is one-on-one counseling. And we can provide that remotely via Zoom meetings, emails, phone calls, and we're slowly working our way back towards some in-person office hours in the Bay Area. Basically, what we can do is sit down with you and go over the processes of selling your goods to the goods or services to the government. When we say government, we mean it could be anything: city, county, tribal, state, federal, any municipality, you name it. So any branch of the government, and really any topic related to procurement. So if you need help with your certifications, registrations, market research, all sorts of stuff, we do cradle to grave assistance. Things we don't assist with are financing, loans, business plans, general business assistance. You'll want to look up your local small business development center. That's the SBDC for that sort of thing. We can also assist by setting up a custom bid matching profile with you. You sit down with your procurement specialist and you work out certain criteria based on what you want to sell to the government. And then every day you will wake up in the morning and, like magic, our program will send you an email with a list of opportunities that it thinks match your criteria. You can click on them, and it's pretty neat. You're brought right to the resources that you might want to bid on. That's a paid service that we offer to you for free, so that's pretty neat. And then you don't have to be in our service area for this. As you know, many of you have joined from outside of our service area today. We put on resources and trainings on a regular basis. So these webinars that we put on and in-person events, hopefully soon, these are always free to join. It doesn't cost anything, and you can join from anywhere when it's convenient for you. And just another note that all of our webinars are put on our website at norcalptac.org. That's also where you can sign up. So if you click on that link there, norcalptac.org, you will be brought to our homepage. You'll see a red Apply Now button on the top. Just remember, we have to be in our service area. You have to be interested in government contracting and not something else. And you have to have an established business that's ready to go. So you can see my contact information on the bottom there. Please reach out to us if you have any questions, and we'd be happy to help. And I'll be around as the host for the rest of the webinar. But now it's time to hand things over to Lenny Bean. He's one of our longest standing procurement specialists, so quite an expert here. And I'll go ahead and let him introduce himself. But you're in great hands with Lenny. So Lenny, thanks for kicking things off here.
Okay.
I can go ahead and move the slides for you, Lenny, don't worry.
Okay, move on. Okay, Earth Day. We're going to talk about what is Earth Day, given emphasis on climate change, global warming, etc. It's good to understand what Earth Day is all about. Talk a little bit about the federal environmental agencies that got involved due to what was driven out of the Earth Day from 1970 forward. And then I'll talk a little bit about the California State Government Marketplace, where you can sign up for doing business with the state. And that'll be the same place that will be referenced in the other two presentations for the Department of Water Resources and Department of Parks and Rec. And at the end, we'll be doing a recap, but we're going to be doing some Q&As in between. So please, if you have questions, put them in the Q&A site. Next slide. So it started in, Earth Day started in 1970, and it was as a result of the 1969 Santa Barbara oil spill, not too far away from most of our attendees today. The name of the gentleman was Gaylord Nelson out of Wisconsin, and he started that because of that spill, started Earth Day, and it went global in 1990. What's interesting is it drove the establishment of the Environmental Protection Agency. Several acts, the National Environmental Education Act, Occupational Safety and Health Act, Clean Water Act, and the Clean Air Act. So all of these things have been established based on the result of starting that Earth Day. The theme of the Earth Day today for this year is Invest in Our Planet. And if you look at the amount of money giving climate change, global warming issues, the Build Back Better from the federal government initiatives, the amount of funding going into the whole Save Our Planet is increased dramatically at the federal and at the state level. So there's lots of opportunity for small businesses to participate in those funds. Next slide, James. So from a federal environmental agency perspective, like the EPA is driven again by Earth Day. And it was created back in 1972, I think. And these are some of their focuses. I'm not going to go through each one. I just want to mention this, that if you're interested in doing business with the federal environmental agencies, here's what they do, get to know what they do. And the Department of Interior, I mean, you look at all of our national parks and the emphasis on taking care of all of that land and ocean, park services, et cetera. It's getting additional funds to, again, we've had lots of forest fires, and as part of that whole initiative of getting that under control too, Department of Interior and the Forest Service. Next slide. So we're focusing on state government marketplace today. If you look at the URL there, Cali Procure, you're going to see that in the upcoming presentations. This is where you do business to register with the state and to do business with the agencies that we discussed today. So the first step is to get yourself registered to do business with the state. This site is fairly user-friendly. However, if you have any issues, please sign up with our program. We'd be happy to help you out. So you want to register to sell to the state. You want to get certified as a small, there's two certifications that the state has, and that's the small business certification and the disabled veteran business enterprise certification. This is where you would apply for those certifications. Then you want to set up a search profile. You want to search for your opportunities. And so when you register in Cali Procure, you want to make sure that you select the right codes. The codes used here are the UNSPSC codes. If you've done business with the federal government, they use different coding system than AICS codes. So you can always go to unspsc.org to define what your codes are, because that's how those searches are going to be driven. There's also a lot of training and resources that are available through the site. And again, we are here to help you as well. Next slide. So if you have any questions or anything about signing up here with the with California state government and their marketplace, be happy to entertain them. If not, we'll move on to Rich Zamuda with.
All right, short and sweet. So yes, we're going to have a number of Q&As throughout this presentation. So this is a nice little reminder that you don't have to keep your questions in your head until the end. If you have a question about anything that you hear, go ahead and type it out into the Q&A, not the chat, please. It's a little hard to follow the questions through the chat, but if you put them in the Q&A, we'll get to them as time permits. So thanks, Lenny. I really appreciate that. No one has any questions right now that I can see, but if you do, please enter them in. We'll get them next time. This is Rich Smuda, like I said, small business, disabled veteran business enterprise program manager with the California Department of Water Resources. And I will let Rich go ahead and introduce himself for the most part, but we have quite an expert in the field here with 30 years of success in the private sector, joining DWR in 2007. So Rich, go ahead and take over, and I will grant you some access here.
Okay, let me give it a shot with the mouse here. I can control it now. Great. Well, good morning, everyone. It's a real pleasure to share this morning with you. We're still, as you all know, 1 foot in the COVID world and gradually moving towards in-person contact. So in the meantime, this is our world, and I'm trying to advance. Here we go. And so this morning, I want to just brief you on the Department of Water Resources. What is our mission, which is pretty, far-reaching in that anything to do with our natural resources in terms of water, that's our job. And this thing is moving forward without me asking it to. So environmental stewardship takes many forms, and then our operations and our procurement needs reflect all this diversity. So we have everything ranging from environmental engineering, and this is moving, James, this is moving forward without me clicking anything. Am I doing something wrong?
It should not be moving forward without you clicking anything. Are you sure you haven't touched the keyboard or the mouse?
I'm not touching anything, and it's just moving right along. So
I haven't touched the keyboard at all. Which slide do you need?
Well, let's go back to the third one down.
Yeah.
Okay, next one. Technology is a grand thing, isn't it? Anyhow, environmental stewardship, it takes many forms, and the type of procurements we need reflects that diversity. And we lean heavily on the science and engineering, particularly and environmental science. But then also we have, the more routine things like everything from landscaping, janitorial services, and so on. But I'll get more into that in a moment. Can you advance the slide, or can I try that again?
I'll go ahead and I can take it.
Okay, that's probably better. Thank you. I appreciate that, James. I ran across this slide some time ago, but I think it captures our complex ecosystem in California, much of which involves water as the principal stuff of life. I mean, we cannot grow anything. We can't have a population depends on water, and many of the issues we have are been exacerbated by the extended drought and all that pressure that puts on our infrastructure and on our really educating people to conserve just as a way of life, because this kind of volatility in our climate is not going to go away. So we have to learn to deal with it as effectively and collectively as we can. Next slide, please. Okay, in terms of our operating, the State Water Project is a 700-mile network of aqueducts, pumping stations, hydropower plants, and levees, and all of that diversity has also been aging. So one of our challenges at DWR is how to invest the money that's been provided so that we can upgrade and continue to support reliable and safe water for all its various needs in the state. Next slide, please. This is just an example of some of the pieces of the state water project, everything from pipeline work, levee system, monitoring and controls of flow of water and electricity. Next slide. Okay, as you might imagine, DWR is a large agency. We've got over 3,200 employees. Our operations are scattered throughout the state, and our procurement structure kind of reflects that diversity because we have multiple points of procurement activities. We have the Division of Business Services. That's where we have the non-IT, IT goods and services and commodities. But then the Division of Engineering has its own construction branch and our architectural and engineering operation. And last but not least, the Division of Operations and Maintenance. They have both headquarters and field divisions that do procurement. So my job as the advocate is to help steer people in the right direction in terms of like if you send me a capability statement, I make sure it gets to the right procurement people so they're aware of what your firm offers. Next slide, please.
Yeah, we're having some issues. It seems to be stuck on auto advance. I'm not exactly sure. That's never happened to me before, so I don't know.
Well, I was in a SAMI, Society of American Military Engineers, had a live outreach event a couple days ago, and their slideshow had the same problem. So it must be something in Microsoft that's doing that.
Yeah.
Anyhow, what I have in the next couple of slides is broken down illustrations of the kinds of things that we buy in these different buckets. So the non-IT services, I'm not going to read it to you, but you can see it covers the range of routine and not so routine. IT goods and services, that is a centralized function for the entire department. The scientific and engineering, that kind of crosses lines internally between construction and operations and maintenance, but you get some idea of these specialties here. And then the next slide, if we can get to it, has to do with our construction division, where it runs the full gamut. And as you can imagine, it includes dealing with the specialized areas of hydropower and dams and so forth, and all the many pieces that go into making our complex water system work. Now, one of the things on our, next slide would be great. Our construction division has created additional resources in its website to get information about construction solicitations, as well at Cali Procure, as well as in major trade publications. You can also request copies from the Division of Engineering to get who's the prime contractors on different jobs if you're trying to develop a marketing plan to find subcontracting opportunities. And there's also some notification lists that you can sign up to alert you to what's going on. Now, the next slide is particularly helpful in terms of looking ahead. This is an online list of what's in the works. It is not yet at the point of solicitations, but this is what our construction division is working on, some generalized estimate of when they expect to do some solicitations. And it's updated every month. So if you want to peek in their crystal ball, access this site. The link is at the bottom of this. So when you get your copies of the presentation, you'll be able to dig in there. And my contact information, the best way to get a hold of me is through email. And the only piece of advice I have is, since I'm the only Zamudan state service, do not buy a vowel between the Z and the M, because that is how it's spelled. So richard.zamuda@water.ca.gov. And I'll be happy to help you in any way I can in terms of communicating what you do to our people or helping you walk through the minefield of state procurements. Thank you. And let's see, do we have any Q&A things here posted.
Yes, we do have a couple questions. I'm going to try to figure out this PowerPoint issue. I apologize to presenters and for the audience for the glitch. I've never had that happen before. Let's see. Jennifer Hampton's asking, does the DWR have a forecast of future RPEs, so our RFPs? So that's a good one that we actually already went over. So is there an ongoing pool for advertising services?
Now, the next question from Anthony Jefferson, do we offer any small procurements? Yes, we encourage the use of the small business bid option, which is an informal solicitation method that can also be directed towards DVBEs. It's for non-public works. The cap on that type of solicitation is $250,000. And then on public works, they recently increased that cap to $388,000. And so in those cases, we do try to target based on, well, we search Cali Procure like everybody else, and we try to find you there. So one of the things I really encourage you to do is look at how thoroughly your profile lists UNSPC codes and keywords, keeping in mind Cali Procure's search engine is not like Amazon or Bing. It will not kind of, oh, this is what I thought you meant. It's an exact match only. So don't put a single UNSPC code. It will not drill down through them. Use clusters of them that surround the kinds of things that you're good at. And the best way to find out if you have a visible profile is search for your competitors. And if you find some that are very easy to find and they match what you do, see what you need to do to copy what they're doing. On the other hand, if you have difficulty finding someone, then that's probably an indication that you need to rethink the kind of search features. How often does non-certified companies win contracts? So, I don't have that at my fingertips. I can dig, if you want that specific answer, I'd be happy to research it and get back to you. Send me an email on that. On terms of our overall record for small business and DVBEs, in most years, we have hit or exceeded the 3%, and with the volume of our purchases, we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars that flow through our procurements. And so, for example, see, I thought I had that out on the side here just a second. Yeah, in fiscal year 2021, we spent $880 million in non-governmental contracts. In other words, we exclude with the Corps of Engineers, anything like that, but just strictly non-governmental contracts, 880 million, of which 181 million went to small business and micro businesses, and 25 million went to DVBE. So that's quite a bit of money, and we're always pushing to increase that share. And I don't see any new Q&As being posted, so thank you very much, and I wish you success going forward.
Thank you, Rich. Appreciate that. All right.
There was one question on bid match.
Yeah, I can handle that directly. Or you can answer it right now if you'd like.
Yeah, sure. So bid match goes out and searches state, local, counties, federal, and it is driven by keywords, not so much codes. And so your keywords that you give us will be the critical factor. And we do have some tools to determine what are the best keywords. It's not a static profile that we set up in bid match for you, but it can be changed at any time. We keep it up to date. And then based on the hits you receive through your email, we can determine whether or not it's working for you. In addition to that, we can, when you get your bid match hits, you click on them, and then eventually you click through, you get a summary. And then when you click through to the actual RFP, you can do it right through the bid match hits that you receive.
So I think the specific question was, does it include county and city level?
Yes, it does include county and city level. But again, driven by keywords to what is being posted as RFPs in those areas. But almost all cities and counties are included in the bid match search.
Great. It's a pretty wide search net. All right, thanks for that good Q&A session. Keep those questions coming. We'll have time after Michelle's. And we'll have, I believe, plenty of time. So we're going to hand things over to Michelle Sakamoto, who has been a partner with PTAC for quite a while. We're really happy to have you back, Michelle. Thanks for joining us. Michelle is an SB DVBE advocate and contract analyst with the California Department of Parks and Recreation. So go ahead and take it away, Michelle, and thank you. And I believe that the slide problem should be fixed. So again, my apologies for that technical glitch. It happens to the best of us.
Thank you, James. As you were saying, my name is Michelle Sakamoto. I'm from the California Department of Parks and Recreation. I am the small business DVB advocate and contract analyst. I've been with the department for a few years now, and I've also taken on the role in our leadership positions under the advocate steering committee. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you a little bit about what we do here at Parks and Recreation. Next screen, please, James. So what we do is we create opportunities for outdoor recreation, which includes our state beaches, our historical buildings, natural and cultural resources. We provide health, inspiration, and education for our students, including adults. We protect and serve all of California, including Oregon State and the San Diego border. We are denuclearized here in Sacramento headquarters, which means all of our field offices operate independently. There's no central buying unit, and we do our best in providing services for small business and disabled veteran business enterprise businesses. Next screen, please. Here is a short breakdown of our department, how it works. We have Sacramento Parks and Recreation headquarters, and then we have all of our field offices. For example, we have Goldfield districts out in Folsom, we have Angeles district out in Los Angeles, and we have Park Ops, which includes all of our PS officers, and then is broken down into sectors in different cities. Next screen, please. What we procure is the most popular are IT services. If you can send me your capability statement for IT, I can forward that to our IT unit in the department. And also we have consulting services. For example, Office of Historical Preservations are looking for education information about histories, ethnic groups, Native Americans, for example. There was just recently a survey in history done on them, and I believe we are building a museum for them within the Sacramento area and Davis. And so we also have picking up trash services, alarm monitoring and installation, water testing, copier and maintenance repair, tree removal. Now that summer has arrived with our fire season, those services may be required. So reach out to your local parks office. And we also have portable chemical toilet services and first aid training. Next screen, please. Some of the most unique items that we do purchase are watercraft and swimming training. Now that the summer season is here, there is a lot of contracting items that are being looked for. So if you can contact your local offices, if you provide kayaking or swimming lessons, those are some of the things that we would be interested in. We also have some yoga classes, translation services, bus services. For example, we will be using those services for our students. There's certain summer programs that they require services transportation in order to get to their location that they desire to. And we also have vaccinations, wild pig removal, and goat grazing. Next screen, please. These are some of our public works contracts, everything from construction to roofing, to maintenance, anything that has to do with the public and building. Those are done through our acquisitions and development unit within parks under park operations. Next screen, please. And here's some of our local tips. Reach out to our local offices, districts and divisions, send them your capability statement and tell them what your business is about. Include your small business certification number on your business cards. And if you decide to send them an email, also include the information on there. Ask the hard questions because there's no questions that can be unanswered. Build a professional relationship with them and be responsive and open-minded. Next screen, please. These are some of the departmental figures for the last couple of fiscal years. For 1920, we had SB percentage of our total contract dollars go through 34.52%, DVBE 6.04% with a total contract dollars of 119 million. For fiscal year 2021, we had 25.44%, and for DVBEs, we had 5.60, total contract dollars of $140 million. And then next screen, please. Here's my contact information. And you can always shoot me an email. That is the best way for you to contact me, and I can forward your information to any of our local district offices that would require your services. I'm gonna send the screen back to you, James.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Michelle. Looks like we have one question here. Make sure everyone has Michelle's contact information, and I'll advance the slide here. Oh, before we go into the final question Q&A here, and it looks like we're going to be ending things a little bit short today, which I hope is fine with everybody. Give you back a few minutes of your life. But we do have upcoming events. Norcal PTAC is always hosting webinars for pretty much every season of the year. So our next webinar is coming up in just a few days, this Thursday. We have a certifications for veteran-owned business. So you might have noticed that folks we have joining us today are SB, DVBE advocates and program managers. DVBE stands for Disabled Veteran Business Enterprise. So if you do interested in that certification and among others, we're going to go over those in a lot more detail, as well as SDVOSB and federal certifications as well for veterans. So that will be on Thursday, April 28th at 10 a.m. On May 5th, the following Thursday, we will have a certifications webinar overview for women-owned small businesses. So especially the WOSB certification, we're going to dive in pretty deep there. So Michelle, let's save those questions for reading aloud. I can see that you're typing one out, so let's make sure we get those to be read aloud, and you can answer them live. We also have a how to do business with the government webinar. This is something that we're actually doing every month. I believe it's the second Thursday of the month at 10 a.m. So if you are curious, if you're interested in what folks have said today, but you need to take a step back and understand the general scheme of how contracting works, these are great to join. So these links will all be live when you get the slides later today. Like I mentioned, they'll be posted to our website where they'll join an archive of the other webinars and slides. So, all right, we have questions. We can with question and answer time. It can be about Michelle's presentation. It can also be about any of the presentations you've seen so far. So Michelle, you have a question there. Let's see, from Anthony Jefferson. And Rich, you can go ahead and turn your video back on as well. And Lenny, if you guys all would like, we can have a plenum Q&A here. Anthony Jefferson is asking, I see a lot of procurements for services. Does the park bid for commodities such as supplies or products?
Can you be a little bit more specific with your questions? Are you talking about something, for example, office supplies? When it comes to office supplies, our own unit buys those supplies for us, since we are headquarters. In terms of a field office, for example, Angeles District, if they needed paper or if they needed staples, they would go ahead and buy those products themselves.
your field office would buy the supplies themselves. Is that what you're
Yes.
saying?
Yes.
Okay. So there are opportunities available for those kind of supplies, but not in your office.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. And Cheryl Archer is saying it sounds like there should be a lot of opportunities for signage. Is this broken out separately or bundled with other contracts?
Well, for parks, you would need to reach out to the prison industry. I believe there's a contract with them with the like interagency agreement. I'm not 100% sure, but I know that with signage, you have to check with them first to see what the process would be, because we're not allowed to buy signage directly from a vendor. You can shoot me an email, or we can go ahead and research that, so make sure you have the right answer.
So you said prison industry. Are you referring to the CDCR? Or
I don't believe it's a reference to CDCR. As Nina Martinez or Rich, do you know the answer?
Yes, Prison Industry Authority. That is literally where prisoners make things, and the state agencies are required to check with their sources, and you cannot compete with that. If they don't do it, then of course you can go to the private sector.
Okay, great. And we have someone who's apologizing for joining a little late in case this was already covered, but I actually think this is a good question for just backing up and covering some of the basics. They're asking if we can define the role of the advocate and how that position facilitates the procurement process.
Well, if you'd like me to jump in there, first of all, it's not a one-size-fits-all answer, because each state agency has somewhat different structures. In Department of Water Resources, I am it for the entire department, and my job is basically like a clearinghouse of information and assistance. Other agencies like Caltrans, they have a wider structure of advocate type positions through their districts. Michelle, you could probably comment on how your structure works.
So for Parks and Recreation, what my role is, I look over the entire state with Rich, like Rich does in his position. I work particularly with the small business and DBBEs. If they come to me with questions, I can make sure they have the correct answer, sending them to our administrative officers, or I can send them to Norcal PTAC, for example. I sent a customer to Norcal PTAC the other day. He was very interested in getting his capability statement updated and make sure he had all the information. He also had questions about Cali Procure. I went through the whole system with him and his profile. So my role is very wide range and includes everything from reporting to my managers to reporting to the Department of General Services.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Michelle and Rich, for that. James Barba is asking, do you have, so it's not addressed to either any one of you in specific, so anyone could take it. Do you have opportunities for landscape developers to specialize in water auditing or landscape engineering?
The short answer is yes. It's usually a part of either habitat restoration projects, or it might be more routine like levee maintenance, but yeah, we do.
For Parks and Recreation, I believe I've seen this opportunity maybe once or twice. That would be more likely a question for a specific district or division that has looking for this type of contract. I would just check back with Cali Procure or reach out to the individual administrative officer of that district.
You're on mute, James.
Oh, thank you. I've just been chatting away. You missed the most important things. No, I was just saying I don't see any more questions in the Q&A window. I do see some activity in the chat. It's sometimes it can be hard to sift through to find a question. So we have a question about if there's any janitorial contracts and sale of cleaning supplies. I think that was mentioned that that is solicited. We had some thanks. Thanks everyone for joining. All right, well, if we don't see any more questions here, we can give you back, it's like 15, 17 minutes of your life here. If you have any other questions that pop up afterwards, please route them. I'm going to be sending out contact information. It will, for our panelists, it will also be on the slides you'll receive. Remember that everyone is going to be getting the slides later today. It'll go on our webinar. You also have a YouTube recording of this video so you can review it at any speed you'd like. So thanks everyone for joining. Thanks Michelle especially, and Rich especially for joining, and Lenny for doing the research on Earth Day. And now Lenny is the Earth Day trivia expert, as we've discovered. So that's nice to have on the team. All right, and as you leave, you should be redirected towards a survey. That is just a satisfaction survey to let us know how you thought we did. You can fill it out in just a minute, and you can do it anonymously. We always want to improve our webinars every time we do them. We want to get better and better. So it matters a lot to us. It also matters to our funder. So please let us know what you felt about today. And if you're interested, if you're in our service area and you're interested in Norcal PTAC assistance, we can dive deeper into any of the topics mentioned today with one of our procurement specialists if you're eligible. So we do hope to see you at future events and see you in counseling sessions. So
Yeah, there's one more question that just popped up.
Oh, sliding in under the radar here. All right.
You got it.
Athena. All right. Saving the day with one last question here. We are painters and often pressure wash prior to starting our prep work. We've heard that power washing may become illegal in the future. Is this true?
I have not heard that. As part of our operations, we do have a need for pressure washing in our state water project, but I have no idea what legal or illegal stuff might be going on with the legislature. As you know, they can go off in any direction. So unfortunately, I don't have an answer to your question.
Neither from my department. I haven't heard any new news about that subject.
All right. Nevertheless, thank you for the question. And we're getting lots of thanks in the chat. So thanks likewise to all of our attendees for joining. Okay. All right. I think that is it. We don't have any more questions. So I hope everyone has a good rest of your day.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for attending.
Bye, everybody.